Hey guys, tonight we're journeying to a land of questionable glamour and guaranteed regret, the world of Tudor beauty products. Imagine all your favorite skincare routines, serums, exfoliators, 10-step Korean glass skin magic. Now replace them with things that burn, itch, and may contain bits of sheep's bladder. That's right, it's the age when skincare meant scraping, bleaching, and praying you didn't catch the plague from your eyeliner. Before we deep dive into the soothing chaos of Tudor self-care, please take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy falling asleep to the sound of history being roasted gently for your entertainment. Comment below and tell me your weirdest beauty fail. I want to know. All right, now dim the lights, put on a fan for that soft white noise, get cozy in your bed, preferably without any dead animals in your pillowcase, unlike some Tudors, and prepare for a journey into a world where pampering might land you in the doctor's office, or a shallow grave. But first, let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to slather your face in raw egg and hope for the best? Or to use lead as your signature highlighter? Would you survive a single night sleeping in hair extensions made from your neighbor's horse? Did anyone actually smell good? Would your teeth glow in the dark or just fall out first? And was beauty sleep even possible when your nightly moisturizer was pig fat? Congratulations. You've just woken up in Tudor England. It's the year 1558. Your face is covered in something that stings. Your cheeks are on fire. And you're about to learn the true meaning of it burns because it's working. Let's get beautiful. Or, at least, historically accurate. Let's talk about mornings. You wake up on a lumpy straw mattress, hair matted from last night's beautifying ointment, which mostly smells like expired cheese. There's no soft alarm clock, just the sound of geese, livestock, and maybe a neighbor screaming about their rash. Your beauty routine begins not with a face mist, but a prayer that you haven't developed boils overnight. Welcome to the dawn of Tudor skincare. Harsh, hopeful, and deeply regrettable. Your eyelids peel open, stuck together with what you desperately hope is just sleep crust. The air in your room is thick and slightly smoky from the hearth fire that burned low through the night. You inhale, and the first note is unmistakably barnyard, followed by a gentle hint of something decomposing in the corner. That's not your new signature scent, it's just Tuesday in Tudor England. You look around at your fellow sleepers, family, a chicken, possibly an in-law who never leaves, and the family dog, who is already licking his own fur with more hygiene than anyone in the house. There's no such thing as privacy, or even personal space. Your little brother is drooling on your only pillow, and your feet are entangled in a patchwork blanket that hasn't been washed since Elizabeth I was in diapers. You gently remove a straw stalk from your ear. Last night, you tried a moisturizing mask made of goose fat and wildflower honey, but somehow it ended up more in your hair than on your skin. Welcome to the first challenge of the Tudor morning, attempting to detach your head from the pillow without losing any hair, dignity, or hope. You'd love to stumble to the bathroom, but in the Tudor world, bathroom is just an optimistic word for cold bucket behind the house. Your morning face rinse comes from a clay jug of yesterday's rainwater, if you're lucky, or the communal basin, which contains more floaties than a public swimming pool in July. You splash your face and hope for the best. There's no toner, just a lingering, tingling sensation that might be freshness or might be early onset frostbite. Now it's time for a little self-assessment. You peer at your reflection in the most high-tech device in your home, a sheet of polished metal. No flattering lighting, no magnification, just a blurry, haunted version of yourself looking back with what can only be described as historic anxiety. You prod a suspicious bump on your chin. Is it a pimple, a flea bite, or just the universe expressing itself? Either way, it's not coming off today. Your best hope is that today's lead-based face powder will even out the terrain. Let's not forget hair care. You grab the family comb, a relic that's seen more centuries than bristles, and tug it through the remnants of last night's treatment. The good news, your hair is now waterproof. The bad news, it's also technically a fire hazard. You do your best to smooth things down and pin your locks beneath a linen coif. If you're feeling ambitious, maybe you'll braid in some ribbons, unless you spot a louse, in which case, congratulations, you're now hosting a small community. Next up, it's time to check for boils, blemishes, and any alarming new skin conditions. In Tudor England, skin is less about radiance and more about survival. Spots, rashes, and mystery blisters are just part of the package. You could ask your mother for advice, but she'll only hand you a jar of cure-all ointment made of pig's lard and questionable herbs with a look that says, "Don't ask, just pray." You dab it on anyway, because in a world without antibiotics, faith and grease are the best you've got. You throw on your day clothes, layers of linen and wool, all lovingly embroidered with stains from the past month's attempts at self-care. There's no such thing as a fresh outfit, there's just less crusty than yesterday. As you lace up your shoes, you realize your heel is sticking to something. You decide not to investigate. Breakfast awaits. A thick bowl of pottage and a slab of gritty bread. You chew, daydreaming about vitamin C, and mentally prepare for the rest of the day. Your Tudor beauty journey has only just begun, and so far, you're holding up about as well as the family cow, who incidentally looks better rested. And so, your morning routine ends not with a sense of accomplishment, but with a feeling of mild relief that you made it through another night without catching fire, freezing, or turning green. In Tudor England, that's what counts as winning the beauty game. Forget your gentle micellar water. In Tudor England, cleansing means splashing your face with cold water from a rain barrel, possibly flavoured with a hint of dead frog. If you're lucky, there's some lye soap nearby, homemade, harsh, and ready to strip your face of both oil and self-esteem. Sometimes you just wipe your face with a rough linen rag and hope nobody notices the mud. Glow up? You wish. Let's start at the rain barrel. It's the closest thing you have to running water, if by running you mean stagnant, mosquito-infested, and occasionally containing a frog that's just as surprised as you are. You scoop up a handful of icy liquid, send a silent prayer that nothing wiggles, and brace yourself for impact. The shock of the cold hits you so hard it nearly sends your teeth rattling into next week. Self-care, Tudor style, is a jolt straight to the soul. Now, about soap. Modern cleansers promise to hydrate, clarify, and whisper affirmations to your pores. Tudor soap? It's here to discipline you. Made by boiling animal fat with ashes and lye, it looks like an ancient potato and smells like a dare. Just lather up, grit your teeth, and try not to imagine what's floating in there. You might scrub away a week's worth of grime, but you'll also remove every ounce of dignity. Redness? That's just historic exfoliation. Softness? Not on the menu. And it's not just your face. Full body cleansing is a rare event, best saved for holidays, marriages, and the occasional outbreak of plague. On most days, you're lucky to attack your face and hands with a bit of rag. A washcloth is just a rectangle of linen so rough it could sand a table. After a good scrubbing, your cheeks are less dewy and more barnyard chic. But at least you tried. For the more adventurous, there's always the ash method. After the morning fire dies down, you can scoop up a bit of soft grey ash and use it to rub away oil. It's basically Tudor dry shampoo. If your definition of dry shampoo is Tudor dry shampoo is looks like you lost a fight with a chimney sweep. The upside is you smell slightly less like yourself and more like last night's firewood. The downside is everything else. There are, of course, beauty hacks. A quick rub of sour milk promises to freshen the skin, or at least confuse it into submission. Some people dab on rose water, if they can afford it, but for most it's water, ash, or the occasional handful of mud. Yes, mud. Clay masks aren't a TikTok trend. They're a last-ditch effort to pretend you're exfoliating and not just covering up yesterday's disaster. Let's not forget the social element. Cleansing isn't done alone, but as a group activity. The family gathers around the basin, each taking a turn with the same dubious rag. No one's judging your technique, Everyone's too busy making sure they don't swallow a bug. Privacy is for future centuries. Once in a while, if you're truly desperate, you might try bathing in the stream. It's freezing, it's public, and it's full of surprises. There's always a chance you'll run into a neighbor, a goose, or something unidentified drifting by. You emerge cleaner, sure, but also slightly traumatized and at least 40% colder. You towel off with whatever's dry, a shirt, a curtain, the family cat if it holds still. At the end of your routine, you check your reflection. Well, not really a reflection, more a blurry suggestion in a bit of tin or a drop of water. Is your skin glowing? Only with the radiant shame of having tried. The dirt might be gone, but the memory of that soap will stay with you forever. You pat yourself down, brush off any lingering ash, and face the day with that special Tudor glow, red, raw, and absolutely unforgettable. Congratulations, you're as clean as you'll ever be until the next big event. Enjoy it. In Tudor England, cleanliness isn't next to godliness, it's just next to impossible. Your main beauty ambition? Looking as pale as a ghost in a snowstorm. This isn't a glass skin era, it's porcelain corpse chic. To achieve this, you'll be caking your face in a delightful concoction called Venetian ceruse, a mix of vinegar and lead. Sure, it might cause tremors and insanity, but it's the price of beauty. Every day you get closer to death and closer to flawless. Why all the fuss about being pale? Simple. In Tudor England, a tan means you work for a living, probably in a field, probably surrounded by livestock and disappointment. The upper classes have no time for peasant hobbies like sunlight or fresh air. Pale skin is your badge of leisure. It's the original out-of-office reply, broadcast right on your forehead. Enter Venetian ceruse, the Beyoncé of toxic beauty trends. You, yes, you, take a small jar of what looks like old cake frosting and begin your transformation. With no makeup sponge in sight, you slap it on with your fingers, or if you're feeling fancy, a bit of rabbit fur. The texture is wall spackle, the finish is haunted doll, and the smell is vinegar with undertones of metallic doom. There's no colour matching in Tudor times. You're going for full geisha ghost. The sensation is immediate. Your pores are sealed so tightly, they file a formal complaint. Breathing through your skin? Not happening. If you have any open cuts, congratulations. You just experienced medieval exfoliation, lead edition. But at least you're looking ethereal or possibly already embalmed. And you're not alone. Everyone at court is doing it. Men and women, young and old, all united in the desperate pursuit of deathly pallor. The goal is to look like you've never worked a day in your life, or possibly like you haven't seen sunlight since the last solar eclipse. Queen Elizabeth I herself is the poster child for the look. Iconic red wig, face paler than uncooked pastry dough, and the kind of regal attitude that says, "Yes, I know this is killing me, but have you seen my cheekbones?" Getting ready each morning becomes a test of endurance. Layer 1 goes on, covering freckles, blemishes, and all evidence of being an actual human. Layer 2 adds extra opacity, like you're auditioning for a marble statue. Layer 3? Why not? No such thing as too flawless in the 16th century. By the time you're finished, your pillow is permanently ruined, your collar is a chalk outline, and your servants are coughing from the fallout. But there are, of course, side effects. The first is that delightful, tingly feeling, just a gentle reminder that you're slowly poisoning yourself in the name of beauty. Over time, your skin dries out, flakes, and begins to crack, leaving you looking less like a porcelain doll and more like a Victorian sidewalk in August. Red sores appear, then scars. The solution? More ceruse. It's a vicious, powdery cycle, like trying to fix a leaky roof by adding more holes. And let's talk about the practical issues. Sweat is your enemy. A single bead will carve a canyon down your cheek, revealing your true, non-aristocratic colour. Smiling risks creating fissures. If you're invited to dance, just pray the lighting is dim and nobody sneezes in your direction. Kissing? Don't even think about it. Venetian ceruse is not an aphrodisiac. It's more of a slow-acting relationship repellent. But the most impressive part? You keep doing it. Everyone does. The fashion for white skin is so powerful that, despite doctors warning about strange afflictions of the nerves and servants whispering about your eyebrows falling out, you go back for more. You're not just painting your face, you're participating in the grand tradition of, if everyone else is dying, at least you'll look good doing it. So as you finish your look, add a little rouge for contrast, and stare into your warped, barely reflective mirror. You can take pride in your achievement. You look just like a Tudor noble, pale, poised, and maybe a little bit haunted. And yes, maybe you've shaved a few years off your life. But that's the price of beauty in the age of lead, where a good complexion can cost you everything, but at least you'll leave a really fabulous corpse. Punchline? They called it the mask of youth, but don't worry, nobody kept it for long. Exfoliation is important, right? In the Tudor world, this means scrubbing your face with anything you can find. Walnut shells, ground eggshells, or for the truly adventurous, a nice handful of river sand. Forget gentle peels. Your skin is about to be raw in ways your therapist can't fix. Let's set the scene. There's no soothing spa music, no cucumber water, and no therapist in a white coat. Instead, you're crouched beside a wooden washstand, holding a bowl of what looks suspiciously like debris swept off the kitchen floor. The family beauty scrub recipe is a carefully guarded secret, handed down through generations, each person adding their own twist. Ground nutshells, last week's stale bread, and, if you're feeling truly decadent, a pinch of dried lavender to mask the scent of old cheese. The goal here isn't radiant glow or gentle renewal. The goal is to sandblast your pores into submission, ideally without drawing blood. You dip your fingers into the mixture and get started, massaging it into your cheeks in hopeful, circular motions. Modern exfoliation removes dead skin cells. Tudor exfoliation removes dead skin, living skin, and probably some regrets from last night's pottage. The sensation? Imagine someone handed you a handful of gravel and told you it was invigorating. The first few scrubs are tolerable, maybe even satisfying if you're the sort who enjoys suffering for beauty. But soon, the pain sets in. Walnut shells are basically medieval microplastics, except they're sharp, unrefined, and possibly still have bits of walnut in them. Eggshells add a lovely calcium crunch, but also the faint memory of breakfast. River sand is the wild card. Fine, abrasive, and sometimes containing little surprises like actual grit, algae, or a small confused beetle. If you're especially unlucky, your neighbour suggests their own secret recipe, which involves ash, old beer dregs, or the rare but unforgettable sheep bone powder. You try it anyway, because who are you to question the wisdom of someone with only 3 visible scars? After 5 minutes, your cheeks are tingling, your nose is a shade of red not found in nature, and your skin is as smooth as well, a medieval cheese grater. And it doesn't stop at your face. Hands, arms, neck, and even feet are fair game, because in Tudor England, exfoliation is less about vanity and more about, I'm covered in barnyard grime and my mother-in-law is coming to judge me. There's no such thing as overdoing it. The more it hurts, the cleaner you feel. If you're not at least a little inflamed by the end, did you even exfoliate? There are no aftercare serums, no calming aloe gels. Instead, you pat your raw face with the nearest cloth, which, in a cruel twist of fate, is probably even rougher than the scrub. You try to ignore the stinging and focus on the fact that at least you've removed the top 3 layers of the week's bad decisions. If you're lucky, someone offers you a dab of goose grease as a moisturizer, which only adds a lovely slick of animal fat to your suffering. The next morning, you wake up to a whole new experience. Tight, burning skin that's somehow both flaking and oily at the same time. Your family nods approvingly at your fresh look, which is really just the universal Tudor signal for I see you tried something and survived. You might sport a few scabs and new freckles, but hey, beauty is pain and pain is just part of the process. So, as you head out for the day, your face tingling in the morning chill, remember this. Modern chemical exfoliants have nothing on a Tudor walnut shell scrub. Your therapist might worry about over-exfoliation, but in Tudor England, if you still have a face left, you're doing just fine. And if anyone asks about your new glow, just smile, if you can, and tell them it's medieval microdermabrasion. Side effects may include sudden humility, loss of skin, and a new appreciation for silk pillowcases. But hey, at least nobody can accuse you of not trying. Let's review the average Tudor all-natural product lineup. Sheep urine, pig fat, honey, ashes, and, if you're lucky, rose water, which is mostly wishful thinking. These ingredients are carefully mixed together by someone who just wiped their hands on the dog. You're basically a walking charcuterie board for flies. It all sounds so wholesome in theory. Natural skincare, the kind of phrase that sells out entire aisles at the modern pharmacy. But in Tudor England, natural means whatever you can extract from an animal, harvest from a field, or scrape off the bottom of your shoe. If you've ever read an ingredient list and wondered, but what if it's too natural? Congratulations, you're ready for the 16th century beauty scene. The day starts with sheep urine, the gold standard in Tudor blemish control. According to your grandmother, who is 32 and has seen it all, dabbing a little fresh sheep urine on your face each morning will clear up pimples, smooth the complexion, and possibly keep the local sheep population at a safe, judgmental distance. The scent is best described as acquired, but who needs a social life when you can have clear skin and a farmyard perfume? For moisturizing, nothing beats pig fat. It's abundant, affordable, and guaranteed to leave your face so slick that even flies need landing gear. Rub it into your cheeks for that signature Tudor shine, glowing not with health, but with saturated lard. Worried about breakouts? Don't be. Nobody in Tudor England escapes boils, anyway. At least you're well preserved for winter, like a ham with dreams. Ashes are next on the menu, usually from last night's fire. Sooty, scratchy, and full of rustic charm, they're used as a gentle exfoliant or mixed with vinegar for a purifying mask. The result is skin that's been stripped of natural oils, hope, and possibly a few years off your life. Still, nothing says I care about myself like dabbing bits of yesterday's fireplace onto your cheeks. Honey is the crowd favorite, reserved for those who can actually afford to let their food go to waste. A sticky, sweet mask promises to soothe the skin, attract every insect within a 5-mile radius, and guarantee you'll never nap peacefully outdoors again. If you're wealthy, you might even have honey and rose water for the ultimate luxury experience. The reality? You're lying very still, face covered in sugar, while bees contemplate making you their new queen. On rare, blessed occasions, someone produces rose water, bottled sunshine, and fairy tales. It's made by steeping rose petals in water and then waiting for a miracle. You get about 3 drops, which you ration out like the world's saddest perfume, dabbing behind your ears and hoping it masks the aroma of everything else. If you ever catch a whiff of actual rose, you know someone's either very rich or very lost. Then there's the apothecary's corner, a mix of secret remedies involving crushed snails, ox gall, goose grease, and whatever else could be found under a rock or behind the barn. Some recipes swear by raw egg whites for tightening skin, though if you're not careful, you'll end up as breakfast for the neighbour's cat. For those who are truly daring, there's a wart removal treatment involving mouse blood and the recitation of a specific prayer. Modern dermatology wishes it had this kind of confidence. Every step in the Tudor skincare process is a gamble. You're never quite sure if you're on the path to radiance or an enthusiastic visit from the village healer, who will definitely recommend more sheep urine. By the end of your morning routine, you're slathered, slick, and possibly in violation of several modern hygiene codes. There's no clean beauty here, just whatever works until it doesn't. And as you stroll out the door, glowing with a unique combination of pride, honey, and barnyard ambience, you have to admire the optimism of it all. In a world without preservatives or regulations, everyone's a pioneer, and occasionally a cautionary tale. Just don't be surprised if the local flies start following you home. After all, in Tudor England, you really are what you put on your face. Imagine trying to smell good in a world with no deodorant, daily bathing, or access to anything remotely floral. Tudors dabbled with perfumes made from ambergris, whale vomit, musk glands, and random flowers. You're always 2 spritzes away from being mistaken for a compost heap. But hey, at least it keeps the lice guessing. Let's start with the basics. It's the 16th century, and you've just completed your weekly cleanse, which, if we're being honest, involved little more than dabbing last night's rainwater behind your ears and hoping for divine intervention. The truth is, the only thing standing between you and total sensory surrender is a collection of the most questionable fragrances ever bottled. Because smelling bad is inevitable, but smelling interesting, that's the Tudor dream. You reach for your perfume, which comes in a precious glass vial, or for the budget-conscious, a reused ink bottle. Inside is a blend that today would be sold as artisanal, but in reality is just whatever didn't rot in the cupboard. First up, ambergris. It sounds romantic until you realize it's whale vomit aged by the ocean, found floating on beaches, and then traded at prices that would make your landlord blush. The Tudors believe this stuff has magical properties, and, to be fair, it does mask the smell of your neighbour's feet, your own armpits, and possibly original sin. If ambergris is out of your price range, there's always musk. Musk comes from glands cut out of male deer, or, if you're especially unlucky, the family ferret. It's musky in the way only something harvested from the intimate bits of a wild animal can be. A dab on your wrist, a sprinkle in your hair, and suddenly you're not sure if you're seducing the lord of the manor or attracting every dog in the county. Musk is potent, earthy, and extremely memorable, mostly in a please open a window kind of way. But the Tudors do try for delicacy. Sometimes, flower petals are crushed, boiled, and strained to create a floral water. Roses, violets, and lavender are favourites, though a hot English summer means most flowers have the life expectancy of a soft cheese on a picnic. Still, if you're lucky enough to come across a genuine floral perfume, you guard it with your life, rationing out droplets for holy days, court appearances, or when you're seated next to someone particularly judgmental at dinner. Herbs are another fallback. Sachets of dried rosemary, thyme, or even sage are sewn into clothing or tucked into pockets. These sweet bags are meant to mask the funk radiating from every Tudor's body. Walk into a room and you'll smell a pungent blend of sweat, herbs, and hope. Every step releases another waft, ensuring that your presence is felt long after you've left. For the truly paranoid, there's the pomander. A small, perforated orb worn on a chain and packed with a mixture of resins, spices, dried flowers, and, if you're lucky, a splash of civet secreted from, you guessed it, a civet's rear end. You swing it as you walk, creating a personal force field of pleasantness that's strong enough to stun passing insects and confuse most household pets. Is any of this effective? It's all relative. Tudor society is so collectively aromatic that smelling sweet just means smelling less. The average nose is numb by age 14. Personal space isn't a concept. Everyone is in close quarters, and your best defense against the stench of the masses is to create your own olfactory signature, no matter how questionable the ingredients. The downside? Perfume is expensive. Most ordinary people have to make do with whatever's at hand, rubbing mint leaves on their wrists, tucking a clove of garlic in a pocket, allegedly for health, but secretly for masking last week's pottage, or waving burning herbs around the house like a medieval air freshener. Royalty, of course, can afford the good stuff, layering scent over scent until their court chambers resemble a cross between a botanical garden and a haunted stable. Still, at the end of the day, everyone is equally susceptible to lice, fleas, and the inevitable question, is that you, or is that the neighbour's goat? In the Tudor world, smelling sweet is a temporary illusion gone with the next heatwave or the next overzealous application of musk. But for a few glorious moments, with your ambergris, your rosewater, and your packet of withered sage, you stand victorious over stench. And honestly, in a world without showers, victory smells a lot like compromise. Dental care means rubbing your teeth with a mix of crushed brick, soot, and maybe some salt if you're fancy. Toothpaste? Not invented. Toothbrush? A stick if you can find one. Your smile may be more horror show than Hollywood, but at least everyone's breath is equally terrifying. Let's start with the morning ritual. Forget about electric toothbrushes, minty gel, or the gentle hum of bathroom luxury. In Tudor England, you wake up with a mouth that tastes like you spent the night licking a fireplace. Your options for cleaning? Limited, resourceful, and often bordering on a crime against enamel. If you're lucky, you've got access to a bit of burnt bread crust, charcoal for the commoner. Otherwise, it's time to reach for the family tooth powder, which is basically whatever can be crushed and vaguely resembles sand, brick dust, ashes, salt, dried herbs, or, on special occasions, a pinch of sage to make the flavor exciting. Application is simple. You dip a damp finger, or, if you're feeling modern, a rag, into the powder and start scrubbing. There's no ergonomic handle, no 2-minute timer. Just grit, pressure, and the hope that nobody walks in and sees you grinding your gums with what amounts to construction debris. Blood is common. Pain is expected. Cleanliness is subjective. What about a toothbrush? The closest thing you'll find is a frayed stick or the chewed end of a willow branch. You gnaw it until the fibers splay out. Then go to work, poking around your mouth like you're cleaning a chimney. If you're a noble, maybe you have a toothpick, often made of silver, or even imported from the exotic land of not here. It doesn't matter. There's still no fluoride, no dental plan, and definitely no floss. Speaking of floss, let's just say the concept hasn't caught on. If you're really determined, you might pick at your teeth with a goose quill, or even a strand of horsehair. Medieval dental hygiene is all about improvisation and desperation, like trying to get spinach out of your molars with a knitting needle. But the real enemy is sugar. The Tudors are just starting to discover the joys of imported sweets, and the wealthier you are, the faster your teeth rot. Sugar is a status symbol, and nothing says I'm rich like a set of black, crumbling teeth, ideally set in a forced, courtly smile. If you're poor, your diet is more porridge and turnips than candied fruit, so your teeth last slightly longer until the daily grind of brick dust does them in. Toothaches are a common Tudor pastime. There's a dull, persistent throb in the background of your day, made worse by the fact that the only available painkillers are ale, wishful thinking, and possibly chewing on a clove if you can afford a spice merchant. When a tooth goes bad, you know it. Swollen gums, pus, and the kind of halitosis that could empty a banquet hall. The only solution? Extraction. Enter the barber surgeon. Yes, the man who cuts your hair is also the guy who'll yank out your tooth, preferably after a few cups of something strong. There's no anesthetic, unless you count screaming as a distraction. The tools are terrifying. Pliers, tongs, maybe a hot knife for cauterization. Infection is basically guaranteed. Survival is not. Losing a tooth is an event, sometimes celebrated if it means the end of pain. Replacement options? None. Dentures exist, but only for the richest of the rich, and they're made of materials like bone, ivory, or, in an extra festive twist, the teeth of dead soldiers. You'd rather gum your bread than risk that. And let's talk about breath. No mouthwash, no mints. Just the hope that everyone else smells as bad as you do. Court etiquette requires you to keep your lips politely closed, and conversation is best kept at arm's length. Kissing? An act of love, bravery, and possibly poor impulse control. So, as you smile into your polished pewter mirror, black gaps and all, remember, you're in good company. Tudor England is a land of questionable teeth and heroic pain tolerance. You may not win any beauty contests, but you'll never be alone. Everyone's breath is a medieval horror story. And on the bright side, there's always more brick dust tomorrow. Thin brows and even thinner hairlines are all the rage. Women pluck their foreheads with tweezers, or just shave them, trying to look as surprised as possible at all times. The result? Your hair starts halfway up your scalp, and your eyebrows are mere rumors. On the bright side, nobody can tell if you're frowning. Welcome to the world of Tudor beauty, where high fashion literally means a higher forehead, and the only thing more prized than a wide expanse of brow is the ability to suffer for it. It's the golden age of the receding hairline, but not because of genetics, because of tweezers, razors, and sheer willpower. You're not balding, you're trendy. Each morning begins with a ritual that would make modern beauty bloggers weep. The forehead plucking ceremony. Out comes the family tweezers, an implement that looks suspiciously like it was made by a blacksmith with anger issues. You hunch over a shard of mirror or, failing that, a shiny spoon, and begin the delicate task of removing every baby hair along your hairline. The pain is sharp, constant, and deeply personal. But you're not alone. The entire household can hear you yelp every few seconds, and your mother shouts encouragement from across the room. Don't forget the temples. Higher is better. For those who prefer efficiency, or just can't handle the tweezers, there's always the razor. Tudor razors are essentially small knives, and using one requires both courage and a willingness to live with scars. You run the blade across your forehead, scraping away the offending hairs and sometimes the top layer of skin. The result? A gleaming, baby-smooth brow that stretches all the way to your scalp. Who needs sunscreen when your five-head is large enough to start its own farm? Eyebrows, meanwhile, are considered almost scandalous. The less you have, the more elegant you appear. Plucking is relentless, thin, arched, and barely visible is the goal. If your brows are naturally dark, you bleach them with a homemade potion of vinegar, ashes, and whatever the local apothecary swears is gentle. The process stings, but the pain means it's working, Tudor logic at its finest. Some go so far as to shave their brows completely, leaving a blank canvas above each eye. Expressionless chic. If, heaven forbid, you accidentally remove too much, there's always the eyebrow pencil, made from burnt cork, soot, or a dab of lampblack. You gently draw a faint line where your eyebrows used to be. Careful not to overdo it lest you look too animated. In a pinch, some women will just leave their brows as ghostly memories, preferring the dignified, slightly confused expression that comes from having no visible eyebrows at all. It's not just women joining in this follicular frenzy. Men, especially those aiming for courtly fashion, are not above a little brow management or a sneaky forehead touch-up. After all, nothing says I'm wealthy and important like a browless, vast expanse of forehead you could project Shakespearean tragedies onto. Of course, all this plucking and shaving comes with side effects. Ingrown hairs, redness, and small cuts are as common as court gossip. There's also the ever-present risk of going just a little too far and ending up with an accidental mohawk, but fashion is nothing without risk. All this effort is meant to show that you're above manual labor. A high forehead is proof you don't toil outdoors or sweat in the fields. Your appearance whispers, I have servants for that. In reality, you have a steady hand and a high pain threshold. The result? A room full of women with shining domes and vanishing brows, glancing around at each other to make sure nobody's hairline has crept back into peasant territory. It's a silent competition. Who can look the most permanently startled, the most serenely aloof, the most removed from the world of unruly body hair? So as you finish your morning grooming, your scalp stinging and your eyebrows little more than a rumour, take a moment to admire your handiwork. In Tudor England, high fashion means high foreheads, invisible brows, and the kind of expression that keeps everyone guessing. And hey, at least if you're ever caught rolling your eyes at court, nobody will be able to tell. For colour, you dab on rouge made from crushed cochineal bugs, or if you're desperate, toxic mercury sulfide. Want blue veins? Paint them on with woad. Tudor makeup is less no-makeup makeup and more daring escape from the circus. Let's begin with the quest for a healthy flush, Tudor style. After you've spent a half hour achieving that signature ghostly pallor with enough lead to poison a small village, It's time to bring some life back into your face. Enter Rouge. A powder or paste derived from crushed beetles if you're wealthy, or a mysterious blend of red ochre and possibly expired berries if you're not. If you're especially unfortunate, your only option is mercury sulfide, which is just as good at giving you a youthful glow as it is at slowly unraveling your sanity. But hey, beauty is about sacrifice. The application process is anything but precise. There's no blush brush or gentle tapping, just 2 fingers and a prayer. You dab on a streak of red, then try to blend it before it dries into something resembling a rash. The goal is to look like you're blushing from innocence or a scandalous rumor, not because you just tried to exfoliate with walnut shells again, too much, and you look like you've just run a marathon in heavy armor. Too little, and you risk accusations of being unwell, or worse, unfashionable. Now, let's address the veins. Pale skin is fashionable, but in Tudor England, pale skin with a hint of visible blue veins is peak beauty. Why? It proves you're so noble that even your blood refuses to associate with the working classes. How do you achieve this look? Woad, a plant-based dye that's usually reserved for terrifying your enemies in battle, gets diluted and painted in little winding lines across your temples and the backs of your hands. The effect is meant to say aristocratic delicacy, but the actual result is closer to varicose vein enthusiast. If you have access to a makeup artist, i.e., your most patient sibling, you might ask for help in perfecting the blue vein technique. But Tudor hands are shaky, and the lighting is medieval, so most attempts end up looking like your toddler tried finger painting while you napped. Still, at least nobody can accuse you of not being creative. Then there's the matter of eye makeup. The Tudors are all about making their eyes pop, sometimes literally, thanks to that mercury again. Lampblack, soot, is the go-to liner and shadow, smeared across eyelids and lashes for a look that's part mysterious noble, part chimney sweep. The application is less smoky eye and more smoked eye. If you're feeling especially brave, you might use a hint of antimony, which promises to lengthen lashes and, if you're unlucky, cause temporary blindness. There's a reason the phrase blinding beauty is not just a metaphor. Lips need their moment too. Tinted with red ochre, alkanet root or leftover rouge, you aim for a mouth that signals health and fertility or at least distracts from the rest of your face. If the color fades by midday, simply reapply, preferably before lunch, so you don't end up ingesting half your lipstick along with your gruel. Bonus points if you manage to keep it off your teeth, which, as we've already established, are not exactly your best feature. The end result is, predictably, unpredictable. One cheek is blushing, one is streaky. Your veins are more Picasso than portrait. Your eyes are lined, and your lips are somewhere. A quick glance in the mirror reveals a look that's less courtly beauty and more escaped from an experimental puppet show. But nobody says a word. Everyone is in the same boat, wearing the same questionable face, all nodding sagely as if this is exactly what they intended. So, as you sashay into the great hall, cheeks ablaze and blue veins waving proudly, remember, in Tudor England, makeup isn't about subtlety, it's about commitment. Your face is a canvas, your supplies are borderline hazardous, and your look is a warning to others. Approach with caution and maybe a wet cloth. You've just survived another round of Tudor makeup. And if someone mistakes you for the jester, well, at least you're memorable. Wigs are everywhere, and not in a chic way. Most are made from horsehair, goat hair, or donated by the recently deceased. You powder it all with flour to hide the lice. Sometimes your wig slips in the middle of court, revealing your secret, and possibly starting a small scandal. Let's set the stage. It's a big day at court, and you want to look your absolute best. Or at least not like you've spent the last week sleeping in a barn, even if you have. But your hair, after years of being yanked, plucked, and doused in goose grease, has had enough. Bald patches are in fashion only if you're a monk or suffering from an illness so rare they might name it after you. For everyone else, it's time to wig up. You reach for your wig stand, which holds a selection of styles that range from overambitious sheepdog to cloud of disappointment. The source of the hair is a mystery best left unsolved. If you're wealthy, it's probably been gathered from the heads of strangers, or, less comfortingly, those who no longer have use for their scalp. For the rest, it's goat hair, horse hair, or a patchwork mix of whatever your cousin could bargain for at the market. Construction is basic but effective. A mass of hair stitched or knotted onto a base that looks suspiciously like a bit of old sailcloth. You don't expect comfort. You expect results. The next step is the most important. Powdering. The Tudors have discovered that flour, chalk, or even powdered starch can brighten a wig and, more importantly, camouflage the colonies of lice setting up shop inside. The result? You smell vaguely like a bakery. But at least it's an improvement over abandoned barn. Affixing the wig is an art. You fasten it to your scalp with pins, ribbons, and, if you're desperate, a little wax. Some resort to gluing it down with animal fat, a choice you immediately regret the next time the sun comes out or a dog gets curious. The real test is movement. You walk slowly, head high, and hope the whole thing doesn't list to one side like a ship caught in a storm. It's a delicate balance, too tight, and you risk a headache worthy of medical intervention. Too loose, and you'll be the talk of the court for all the wrong reasons. The styles themselves are ambitious. Some are curled, some are braided, and some are piled so high it's a miracle you can fit through a door. The goal is to look regal, but the result is often a cross between a dust bunny and a slightly eccentric sheep. If you're very lucky, you catch a glimpse of yourself in a reflective surface and think, not bad. If you're not, you just hope nobody gets too close. Of course, wigs come with their own set of hazards. Lice are a constant threat, and the act of powdering only encourages them to burrow deeper. Every so often, you'll spot a friend vigorously scratching their head, trying to look nonchalant while battling a tiny, determined army. The true experts learn to ignore the itch and focus on posture. And then there's the risk of public humiliation. Nothing says power move like a grand bow, only for your wig to slide forward, revealing your real hair or lack thereof. The polite thing to do is pretend nothing happened, but the snickers from the sidelines tell another story. Wigs are, for better or worse, social currency. A well-placed, well-powdered wig signals wealth, status, and an admirable level of denial about personal hygiene. By the end of the day, your scalp itches, your forehead is dusted white, and you've consumed at least a spoonful of flour by accident. You peel off your wig with a sigh, feeling both relief and a pang of dread for tomorrow's performance. You gently pick out any lingering livestock and set the wig by the fire, hoping it airs out before morning. So next time you see an elaborate Tudor portrait, remember, beneath that tower of curls and powder is a person desperately hoping their wig stays put and their secrets stay hidden. In the world of Tudor beauty, a good wig can open doors, but a bad wig will haunt you forever. Shampoo hasn't been invented, so you'll be massaging in lard, ashes, and maybe some rosemary if you're royalty. Washing your hair is a quarterly event. Most days, you just pin it up and hope nobody gets too close. Let's talk about hair hygiene in Tudor England, if you can call it hygiene. The concept of freshly washed hair is as distant as indoor plumbing. For most, the best you can hope for is that your locks don't actually crunch when you move your head. The idea of running water, scented shampoo, and fluffy towels is reserved for the distant future, or possibly for the afterlife, if you behave yourself. Washing your hair is not a casual undertaking, it's a production. It starts with a large wooden tub and several buckets of cold water fetched from the nearest well, pond, or whatever body of liquid hasn't frozen solid this week. Heating water over the fire is an option, but it's not for the faint of heart, especially when you realize the last person to use the kettle boiled their undergarments in it. If you're lucky enough to be noble, a servant will handle all of this while you ponder how many people it actually takes to get your head damp. Now comes the question of what to use. Shampoo? Dream on. Soap is a rarity, and when available, it's a harsh, lye-based bar that does for your hair what sandpaper does for old furniture. Most people turn to household staples: lard for moisture, ashes for cleansing, and, if you want to get fancy, a handful of rosemary or lavender, if you can actually afford to sacrifice them for your scalp instead of dinner. The combination is memorable. Lard leaves a shine that would make a seal jealous, and ashes are great for removing oil, dirt, and also any memory you had of soft, manageable hair. The method is as basic as the ingredients. Scoop up a handful of lard, work it into the roots, and hope you can ignore the smell. Add a sprinkle of ashes, rub until you can't tell what's scalp and what's residue, and then, if you're truly ambitious, dump cold water over your head while screeching softly. There's no such thing as rinse and repeat. There's just try not to cry. For those too busy or sensible to go through this ordeal, there's always the old standby: don't bother. Most Tudors simply tie up their hair, stuff it under a cap, and let time do the rest. Head coverings are a must. Partly for modesty, partly to hide the fact that you're now entering week 8 of natural oils only. If you're feeling particularly fashionable, you might powder your hair with flour or scented powders to mask both the shine and the inevitable odor. But what about the itching? Lice, fleas, and the ever-present threat of mysterious scalp conditions are just facts of life. Special combs, long, fine-toothed torture devices, are used to remove as many critters as possible. The combing ritual is a family event, often performed around the hearth while everyone pretends not to notice the wildlife being evicted. The best outcome is to catch the lice before they stage a full rebellion. There are remedies, of course. Old wives' tales abound. Rub your head with vinegar, douse it in strong ale, or bury it in a pile of mint leaves. Some people even swear by egg yolks for conditioning. The only guarantee is that whatever you use, your hair will have a new and exciting texture, and perhaps attract some local wildlife. After this quarterly adventure, you let your hair dry by the fire, emitting a subtle aroma of barbecue and regret. You can't help but feel a strange pride, at least until you spot the next louse making a break for freedom. The cycle begins again. Tie it up, pin it back, and hope for a gentle breeze if you're standing downwind. In the end, Tudor hair care is an exercise in patience, humility, and occasionally hiding in plain sight. You may not win any awards for shine, volume, or bounce, but at least you've survived another washing. That, in this world, is a miracle worthy of a sonnet, or at least a round of sympathetic nods at the next village gathering. Nighttime skincare means slathering your face in goose grease, pig lard, or any handy animal fat. The idea is to lock in moisture. What you actually lock in is the neighborhood dog, who won't stop sniffing your pillow. Welcome to the most glamorous part of the Tudor beauty routine: bedtime. You might imagine winding down with a soothing herbal tea and a bit of gentle lavender oil. Not here. In Tudor England, the evening is when the real innovation happens, and by innovation, I mean rooting around in the kitchen to see what's left of last month's bacon. It starts with a quick check in your polished metal mirror, basically a blurry puddle with commitment issues, to see just how much of today's dirt has survived. The answer is always, most of it. But that's not a problem. You're about to coat your face with a protective layer thick enough to survive a minor house fire. You reach for the family jar of animal fat, which is as multi-purpose as it is mysterious. The best batches are saved for face and hands. The lesser lard goes to the boots or sometimes the windows. The texture is somewhere between melted candle and day-old stew. The smell is bold, especially if you forgot to strain out the meaty bits. Still, this is your nightly elixir, promising to keep your skin from cracking like the church's stone floor in January. Application is hands-on. There are no soft bristled brushes or little jade rollers. You just scoop and smear, working the fat into every crevice and line. The effect is immediate. Shine for days. On the plus side, your face is now basically waterproof and immune to the harshest winter winds. On the downside, You glisten like a pork chop under tavern lights. The theory behind this madness is sound, sort of. Tudors believe that animal fat locks in the body's natural heat and moisture, creating a barrier against cold, dry air and possibly evil spirits. In a way, it's the forerunner of modern occlusive creams, just with more cholesterol. Some swear by goose grease for a smoother finish, but any fat will do in a pinch. If you're lucky enough to own a goose, it's practically a walking pharmacy. Of course, beauty sleep is complicated by your living situation. You don't sleep alone. The bed is crowded with family members, pets, and, if the wind is right, half the village flea population. As you settle in, every dog within 3 houses lines up to sniff your pillow, hoping for a midnight snack. You wake up more than once to find a suspicious paw on your face or a cat licking your cheek, convinced you're some kind of edible miracle. As the night drags on, your paws have time to contemplate their life choices. You may wake up in the morning feeling surprisingly soft, or, more likely, slightly sticky, your pillow smeared with lard, your hair now part of the skincare experiment. If you're lucky, you avoided the full face imprint of the family dog's paw, but odds are you'll spot at least one bacon-shaped stain across your cheek. Every so often, someone tries to upgrade the routine, adding a dab of honey or a drop of rosewater to the fat. This improves the scent for about 10 minutes, until the underlying essence of roast dinner takes over. Occasionally, there are rumors of foreign oils, almond, olive, something called sweet oil, but these are reserved for the super rich, or for the apothecary's daughter, who claims her skin is soft because she never works a day in her life. In the end, the goal is not radiant skin or pillow-soft cheeks, but survival. The fat helps keep the cold at bay and, just maybe, slows the advance of wrinkles, frostbite, and existential dread. You rise in the morning with your face still glistening, the scent of breakfast haunting your dreams, and a new understanding of glow. So the next time you reach for your $80 night cream, remember, in Tudor England, beauty sleep meant sharing your bed with both the family and the breakfast menu. And if you woke up dog-licked but alive, you called it a win. The palace hallways reek of a blend of sweat, mildew, and whatever perfume Henry VIII's latest wife was wearing. People try to mask the smell with pomanders, orbs filled with dried herbs, and, for the wealthy, actual gold leaf. Everyone else just powers through with denial. Let's take a walk through the palace. The floors are polished with animal fat. The tapestries are grand, and every corridor promises the possibility of a courtier or a chicken lurking around the next corner. But before you can admire the luxury, your nose is assaulted by the unique olfactory experience that is Tudor England. If you've ever wondered what it's like to tour history's most exclusive gym locker, this is your moment. The source of the scent is democratic. It doesn't matter if you're a servant or a lady in waiting. Everyone is equally fragrant. The Tudors, after all, bathe infrequently. And even when they do, it's a process so elaborate that it's best saved for coronations, near-death experiences, or royal marriages. Instead, the body is simply wiped down with a damp rag or dusted with powder, and hope is applied liberally. Add to that the ever-present mildew. Stone walls, leaky roofs, and England's famous dampness create the perfect conditions for mold to bloom in every corner. The tapestries meant to keep out the chill become sponges for every spore in the kingdom. If you listen closely, you can hear the mildew quietly celebrating its success every time it rains. Now, let's discuss the perfume, if you can call it that. At court, everyone is desperate to outsmell their rivals. For the wealthy, this means pomanders, ornamental metal balls stuffed with dried herbs, spices, and if you really want to make a statement, actual gold leaf. You hang it from your belt or dangle it from your wrist, waving it under your nose whenever someone nearby gets too expressive with their armpits. For the less affluent, the options are creative but less effective. Sachets of lavender, rosemary, or sage are sewn into sleeves and collars, doing their best to mask a week's worth of sweat. Some people simply tuck a sprig of mint behind each ear and hope for the best. The most popular method, though, is good old-fashioned denial. You breathe shallowly and pretend not to notice that the man next to you hasn't changed his doublet since Lent. Then there's Henry VIII's wives. Each one leaves her mark, literally. The scent of Anne Boleyn's rosewater lingers in the halls long after her head has departed, while Catherine Parr's frankincense tries valiantly to compete with the smell of boiled cabbage and disappointment. Perfume is less about seduction and more about survival. And let's not forget the layers of animal fat rubbed onto floors, boots, and even faces to keep out the cold. When combined with open fires, roasted meats, and the delightful undertones of damp straw, it's a full sensory adventure. The palace is less Versailles, more medieval potpourri, with top notes of barn. Servants have it worst of all. Responsible for cleaning up after the nobles, they're constantly exposed to every flavour of Tudor funk. They know every shortcut and hidden passage, mostly because some hallways are best avoided until a stiff breeze blows through. And when all else fails, they join the masses in blaming the dogs. Still, in this world, nobody complains, at least not out loud. If anything, the shared suffering brings people together. You may be standing in a corridor that smells like defeat and goat, but at least you're not alone. Court gossip travels faster than fresh air ever could, and everyone knows who's responsible for the worst olfactory offences. Eventually, you become nose-blind. What started as overwhelming soon fades into the background hum of daily life. When a visiting ambassador remarks on the robust atmosphere, you simply nod and offer him a pomander. Never mind that it's already been chewed on by the palace cat. So as you drift through the halls, breathing through your sleeve and clinging to your herb pouch, remember, in Tudor England, hygiene is mostly performance art, and denial is the best deodorant of all. Nobody has clear skin. Boils, rashes, and open sores are considered regular features, not flaws. You blame the air, the water, or your neighbour's evil eye. Modern acne seems gentle by comparison. Let's be honest, if you're in Tudor England, your complexion is less dewy glow and more historical battlefield. In a world without antibiotics, retinoids, or even a basic understanding of germs, your face is at the mercy of every weird rash, pox, or lump that medieval life can throw at you. You wake up each morning, peer into your polished pewter mirror, and play everyone's favourite Tudor game. Is that going away, or is it getting worse? The most common skin complaint is the boil, a big, red, angry lump that appears out of nowhere and stays until it either bursts on its own or you finally work up the courage to ask the apothecary for one of his special poultices. The usual home treatment? A hot bread poultice, soothing if you can spare the bread. A dab of honey attracts every fly in the county, or simply ignoring it and hoping for divine intervention. Of course, if the boil explodes at an awkward dinner, everyone politely looks away. This is Tudor England. We all have secrets. Spots are everywhere. Chin, cheeks, forehead, and for variety, sometimes the back of your neck. Pimples might be caused by stress, bad water, or simply the universe's way of reminding you that you'll never know peace. If you're noble, you cake on a fresh layer of lead-based makeup to cover it up, giving the spot a chance to fester in privacy. If you're not, you might try scrubbing it with ashes, sheep urine, or sour milk. Each remedy is delivered by a family elder who swears it worked for their cousin's neighbour's aunt, even though nobody can remember what she looked like with her hood off. And then there are the rashes. Every patch of skin is fair game. Maybe it's from the lye soap. Maybe it's a reaction to goose grease. Or maybe it's that mysterious weed you rubbed on last week, because someone at market said it brings out the colour. The result is the same: red, itchy, and spreading. You blame the local water, which is full of everything except purity. If all else fails, you simply blame your neighbour. After all, it's common knowledge that a dirty look can give you hives. Open sores are the most dramatic. These are usually the result of scratching something that should not have been scratched, or picking at that one spot everyone told you to leave alone. Bandages are rare and not especially effective. They're strips of linen or, If you're unlucky, recycled from last week's washing. The solution is always to let it breathe, which in Tudor England means show it off at dinner and see if anyone else has a matching set. Let's not forget the pox. Smallpox, chickenpox, the French pox, aka syphilis. There's a pox for everyone. Survivors of the various poxes wear their scars like medals, proof of having lived through the world's harshest beauty treatments. If you're lucky, the marks fade to a gentle speckled egg look. If not, you can always claim they're fashionable. In a pinch, you might even glue a velvet beauty patch over the worst spots and call it a day. Of course, in a world where everyone is spotty, standards shift. Flawless skin is suspicious, probably the sign of witchcraft or a deal with the devil. Better to have a few blemishes and blend in than be the only smooth-cheeked soul in town and end up on the wrong end of a torch-wielding crowd. For children, it's even more unfair. Spots and rashes come with childhood. Most are passed around like party favors. If your kid gets the pox, you invite the neighbor's children over to get it over with. If nothing else, you can always blame the neighbor's goat for bringing in the latest outbreak. In the end, the true Tudor beauty secret is resilience. You accept your skin for what it is, imperfect, lumpy, occasionally alarming, but uniquely yours. You slap on some lard, mutter a quick prayer, and get on with your day. Because in this world, survival is more beautiful than any spotless complexion. And if you really want to stand out, just tell everyone your rash is the latest trend. If you're lucky, they'll believe you, or at least stop asking questions. There's no salon, but there is a small, sharp knife. Fingernails are trimmed once a month, usually at the same time as you cut bread. No polish, but plenty of grime. Sometimes you add a little berry juice for colour, but mostly you're just trying to not lose a finger. Welcome to the unglamorous world of Tudor nail care, where the closest thing to a manicure set is whatever you can find in the kitchen drawer. If you want beautiful hands, you'll need three things: low standards, high pain tolerance, and an unwavering disregard for personal safety. Forget buffing blocks and emery boards. Here, the go-to tool for grooming is the family knife, a multi-purpose implement used for everything from slicing turnips to, occasionally, defending your honor. Now it's here to serve as your nail trimmer, cuticle pusher, and, if you're not careful, impromptu bloodletting device. You start your monthly manicure by examining your hands in the dim light of the hearth, squinting at your nails and deciding which ones can be saved and which are a lost cause. Under each nail is a living archive of Tudor life. Garden soil, ash from the fireplace, a little cheese from breakfast, and possibly a whole new species of fungus. Washing under the nails is technically possible but logistically unlikely, since water is precious and soap is scarcer than royal invitations. You could try scrubbing with a brush if you had one, but most folks just scrape under their nails with the tip of that same knife and hope for the best. Actual nail trimming is an adventure. You balance the knife against the edge of your nail and attempt to clip by slicing, which requires a steady hand and nerves of steel. One slip, and you'll be explaining your new bandage at Sunday Mass. Most people play it safe and leave their nails a little longer than fashion dictates. Better a dirty nail than a missing fingertip. The resulting shape is best described as organic, with a few jagged edges thrown in for character. Nail polish? Not invented. But that doesn't mean Tudor folks didn't crave a little colour. If you're feeling fancy, you might rub a blackberry or currant across your nails for a short-lived stain. The effect is more berry massacre than manicured elegance, but it's the effort that counts. Wealthier folks sometimes dab on a mixture of soot and oil for a darker look, but this tends to attract unwanted attention from both neighbours and hungry insects. Hangnails, chips and cracks are just part of the package. If you tear a nail, you wrap it in a strip of linen and carry on. If you break one clean off, you wince, swear under your breath, and add it to the long list of daily Tudor injuries. There are no cuticle creams, but plenty of lard to smear on if you're desperate. Just don't confuse it with the lard you put on your face or in your stew. Despite all this, there are social standards for nails. Clean, short nails are a sign that you don't spend every waking hour mucking out the pigsty. Dirty, ragged nails mark you as a working soul, but at least you're honest. Nobles and gentry might have softer hands, if only because they don't do the washing up themselves. But even they can't escape the occasional mystery stain. There are a few home remedies floating around. A lemon rubbed on the nail promises to brighten the colour, assuming you can find a lemon and don't mind the sting in your latest open wound. Some swear by soaking fingertips in warm ale, a solution that works mostly by getting you tipsy enough to ignore how bad your hands look. Nail biting is a nervous habit, but in Tudor England, it's also practical, a quick way to trim if your knife is too blunt or you're too busy running from responsibilities. Nobody judges. If you have fingernails at all by the end of the harvest season, you're winning. So next time you admire a modern manicure, remember, in Tudor England, every nail is a tiny survivor. No polish, no pampering, just a knife, a prayer, and the hope that you'll get through another month with all 10 fingers still attached. Advice comes from your grandmother, who once met a woman who lived to 40. The remedies are all horrifying, but delivered with absolute confidence. To remove freckles, simply dab with sour milk and recite a prayer. Will it work? No. Will you do it anyway? Absolutely. Welcome to the original beauty influencer era. No Instagram, no filters, just a chorus of relatives with opinions. In Tudor England, every ailment has a cure, every blemish a backstory, and every grandmother the wisdom of the ages. Or so she claims. You could spend hours listening to your elders swap recipes for homemade ointments and miracle pastes, each more outlandish than the last, all shared with the conviction of a Nobel Prize laureate. Let's start with skin. Too many spots? Your aunt suggests boiling nettles and dabbing the juice on your cheeks, but only at the full moon. Your neighbour swears by onion poultices. Rub a raw onion on your blemishes and then bury it in the garden to draw out the imperfections. There's a strong undercurrent of magic here, with instructions to turn around 3 times and never let a left-handed person watch you apply the potion. If your spots don't vanish, it's obviously because you missed a step. Hair care tips are even more creative. Want it glossy? Brush it with goose feathers every morning. Is it thinning? Try a scalp massage with warm bacon grease, preferably applied while reciting a psalm. If your hair falls out anyway, simply blame your enemies and make a quick trip to the apothecary for a packet of dried mole's foot. Not guaranteed to help, but does make for good conversation. For soft hands, your cousin's wife insists on soaking them in goat's milk if you can spare it from breakfast. Others recommend rubbing the inside of a pumpkin peel on your palms, then avoiding the sun for 7 days. Someone, somewhere, swears that the real trick is to never touch anything except embroidery and lightly scented letters, but this is less advice and more wishful thinking. Teeth and mouth hygiene bring out the most inventive side of the Tudor influencer. To whiten your teeth, your uncle says to rub them with sage leaves, then brush with a burnt crust of bread. Fresh breath? Chew a clove or, failing that, just keep your mouth shut at all times. A winning smile is less about beauty and more about keeping your teeth in your head past the age of 25. Sometimes the advice is oddly poetic. To grow long lashes, brush them with the tears of a new widow. Need fuller lips? Bite them gently every morning and hope for the best. To keep your cheeks rosy, pinch them at sunrise. If you're ever caught frowning, beware. Someone will tell you your face will freeze that way. And in Tudor England, that actually feels like a legitimate threat. Then there are the preventative measures. For clear skin, always sleep facing east, or hang a bundle of dried lavender above your bed. For strong nails, soak them in ale and avoid quarrelling with red-haired women. For a general glow, drink dandelion tea and avoid all mirrors after sunset. Of course, the common thread in all this advice is unwavering confidence, delivered with a look that says, "Don't question me, I've seen things." Even if the method fails spectacularly, and it will, you keep going, because to refuse advice is to risk offending the entire family tree. Every blemish, every freckle, every new wrinkle is just another opportunity for someone to say, "I told you so," before handing you a poultice that smells like last year's laundry. In the end, you follow the rituals not because you expect them to work, but because they're tradition, and tradition, in Tudor England, is as binding as gravity. So you dab your sour milk, count your blessings, and get ready for another day of questionable beauty wisdom, all under the approving gaze of your grandmother, the original Tudor influencer. And when you're 40, you'll pass it all down, terrifying remedies and all, because, after all, it's the Tudor way. Bathing is a rare, special event. The whole family might share a single wooden tub, or you might just sponge yourself with a rag and hope for the best. Soap is reserved for serious occasions, like when you accidentally set yourself on fire. Let's set the scene. It's been weeks, possibly months, since you've had anything close to a proper bath. The prospect of getting clean is both thrilling and terrifying. On one hand, you might finally part ways with that stubborn patch of mud on your ankle. On the other hand, you're not entirely sure what's living behind your ears, and you suspect your shirt has developed its own ecosystem. In Tudor England, bathing isn't just a chore, it's a logistical event. Preparation is everything. First, someone must fetch water, which means dragging heavy buckets from the well, river, or nearest rain barrel. This task alone is exhausting, and by the time the tub is full, you've sweat through 2 layers of linen, defeating the entire purpose. Next, if you're lucky, the water is heated over the hearth. If you're not, you simply brace yourself and lower your body into a tub of frigid disappointment, trying not to scream and wake the livestock. The family bath is an exercise in both patience and strategic timing. The eldest or the head of household usually goes first, luxuriating in the only remotely clean water. Everyone else gets in afterward, each person raising the overall temperature and the overall cloudiness by several degrees. By the time you get your turn, you're basically marinating in a medieval soup. The unwritten rule is don't think about it too hard. Soap, if you have it, is used sparingly, precious stuff made from animal fat and lye, strong enough to peel wallpaper. The smell is something between burnt bacon and old cheese, and it stings if you have even a hint of a cut, but it's still better than the alternative, scrubbing yourself with a handful of gritty sand or a tough piece of linen until your skin is so raw you're a fire hazard. For those not up to the full tub experience, there's always the sponge bath option. A quick wipe down with a rag and a splash of water is often all you can manage. It's a fast, pragmatic approach, but also a bit of a gamble. Are you cleaner, or did you just rearrange the dirt? You'll never know. You hope for the best and go on with your day, maybe feeling a bit lighter, or maybe just wetter. Then comes the drying process. Forget about fluffy towels or scented powders. You grab the nearest piece of cloth, probably the same one your cousin used to dry off his feet, and do your best. If the fire's going, you dry off nearby, savouring those precious seconds before the chill creeps back in. If not, you shiver in a drafty corner and promise yourself you'll never bathe again, until next quarter, at least. Bath time is also when the community gossip flows. The whole family is packed into one room, everyone pretending not to notice who skipped the back of their knees. Secrets are whispered, songs are sung, and inevitably someone slips and turns the event into slapstick comedy. It's bonding at its rawest, literally. Of course, there's a hierarchy to bathing. Nobles sometimes have private tubs and even servants to heat water, scrub backs, and refill buckets. The rest of us? We make do, and then we make up stories about how bathing too often is bad for the health, because nothing justifies questionable hygiene like a touch of scientific-sounding nonsense. When it's over, you emerge refreshed, tingling, and a little bit traumatized. The feeling of clean skin is almost unsettling, like you've shed your protective medieval shell. You air out your linens, enjoy the fleeting sense of purity, and promptly swear never to let yourself get this dirty again. Spoiler, you will. So, next time you run a hot bath just because you're bored, remember, for a Tudor, bathing is less self-care and more quarterly panic, family drama, and a test of both your endurance and your immune system. And really, what could be more memorable than that? Want to look snatched? Lace up a corset until your organs consider quitting. Bruising, fainting, and mild internal rearrangement are normal. If you don't pass out at least once a week, are you even trying? Welcome to the Tudor era, where beauty is pain isn't a punchline, it's a lifestyle. If you're a woman of fashion, or aiming to look like one, your day begins and ends with a battle against your own anatomy, armed only with a length of stiff linen, whalebone, and the questionable optimism of whoever is assigned to lace you up. Modern shapewear has nothing on the sheer determination and creative medical emergencies brought about by the Tudor corset. It starts innocently enough. You step into your underdress, shrug on a chemise, and stare down the intimidating structure that is your corset, or stays, if you want to sound fancy. This device has one job: transform your soft, breathing torso into the rigid hourglass silhouette currently in vogue at court. You hand the laces to your sister, mother, or long-suffering maid, and hope she had a good breakfast. Because tightening a Tudor corset is part endurance test, part competitive sport. The process is not for the faint of heart. Literally. Each tug of the laces draws your waist a bit closer to wasp-like, while your lungs begin to file complaints with your brain. Breathing becomes shallow. Your voice rises a good octave, and you start to wonder if you'll ever eat solid food again. By the time the last knot is tied, you're standing tall, unable to bend at the waist, and feeling faintly giddy, a combination of pride and a sudden drop in oxygen supply. Corsets do wonders for your posture, mostly because you don't have a choice. Slouching is impossible, twisting is discouraged, and if you ever try to sit down quickly, prepare to hear the alarming crunch of whalebone and a distant, ancestral scream. You move with stately grace, partly out of elegance, mostly out of necessity. Everyone looks regal when they're terrified of splitting a seam. Of course, bruises are inevitable. The pressure points along your ribs and hips darken into blotchy badges of honor, and if you're lucky, your skin will toughen up before the next royal event. If you're not, you'll learn the hard way why Tudor dresses come in so many layers to hide the impressive collection of bruises, welts, and occasionally a strategically placed bandage or two. Then there's the fainting. Not just a melodramatic flourish, but a genuine occupational hazard. Heat, hunger, nerves, or just one too many extra tugs can send even the toughest court lady swooning into a nearby tapestry. The fashion for tight lacing and heavy fabrics means that fainting couches are not an affectation, they're essential survival equipment. Servants are always on standby with smelling salts, a splash of cold water, and a strong back to haul you upright. Eating while corseted is a careful negotiation. Meals are small, bites are dainty, and if you overindulge, there's a good chance you'll be excusing yourself to take the air before dessert. Breathing is a luxury, and laughing too hard is downright risky. Anything beyond a polite giggle could spell disaster for both your dignity and your corset. Men aren't entirely off the hook. Doublets and jerkins may not squeeze quite as hard, but fashion still demands discomfort. Tight hose, starched ruffs, and layers upon layers mean everyone suffers for a seat at the style table. But let's face it, corset casualties are overwhelmingly a ladies' sport. Through it all, you endure. Why? Because a tiny waist is proof of status, wealth, and willingness to go the extra mile for beauty, or at least half a mile, since you can't breathe deeply enough for a full lap. Complaining is frowned upon, so you smile through the discomfort and try to ignore the pins and needles creeping down your left arm. And when you finally stagger back to your room and unlace at the end of the day, the rush of air is almost euphoric. You collapse onto your bed, bruised but triumphant, and promise yourself you'll never do this again, until tomorrow, when the next court gathering demands you look your best. Even if your organs beg to differ, smallpox scars are everywhere, and sometimes considered badges of survival. Some people try to hide them with more lead paint. Others just embrace the texture. Today's skin texture filters have nothing on real Tudor faces. Let's set the scene. You're mingling at court, surrounded by lords and ladies, and everywhere you look, you see faces as textured as the palace walls, crisscrossed with scars, marked by the history of every pox outbreak that swept through the land. In the Tudor world, smooth skin is less of a beauty goal and more of a red flag. If you're unmarked, you're either suspiciously lucky or you haven't lived long enough to catch something memorable. Smallpox is the main culprit, but it's not alone. Chickenpox, measles, and the ever-present mystery rash all leave their mark. When a disease comes to town, it doesn't just visit, it moves in, redecorates your immune system, and leaves you with souvenirs you'll never forget. Recovery isn't the end of the ordeal. It's just the start of a lifelong relationship with your new accessories. Surviving smallpox, for instance, is a feat in itself. The fever, the misery, the endless scratching. By the time you're back on your feet, you've earned the right to every scar, evidence that you're one of the lucky and stubborn few who made it through. In a strange twist of Tudor psychology, these scars become social shorthand. You're strong, you're seasoned, and you've definitely attended more funerals than birthday parties. Of course, not everyone wants to show off their survival skills. Some people reach for the infamous Venetian ceruse, smearing their faces with layers of lead-based paint in hopes of blurring out the craters and lines. If you think modern foundation cakes, imagine something with the consistency of spackle, applied with the dedication of a construction worker patching a leaky roof. The result is variable. Under the glow of torchlight, you might appear regal, smooth, and slightly ghostly. In sunlight, however, you're a walking cautionary tale, ghostly pale and a little bit lumpy. Then there are those who simply own it. Scarred faces become fashion statements in their own right. It's not uncommon to see a lord or lady brazenly bare their poxmarks, pairing them with a dramatic beauty patch or a knowing smirk. In this world, texture isn't something to conceal, it's something to flaunt. Every bump and crater is a reminder. You're still here. For a bit of fun, some Tudors apply velvet or silk beauty patches in decorative shapes. Stars, moons, hearts, right on top of their scars. These aren't just for looks, they're also clever covers for boils, warts, or that one spot you picked at last night and now deeply regret. Sometimes the patch is placed with strategic intent, near the lips to suggest flirtation, on the cheek for cheerfulness, or on the chin to imply mischief. It's a literal patchwork of stories, right on your face. Children, of course, collect their own scars as they tumble through childhood diseases. A freckled, pockmarked face is the norm at school or in the marketplace. Parents compare notes. My Tom got off easy, only 5 scars. It's all part of growing up in a time when germs are mysterious. Soap is a luxury, and immune system is just another word for luck. The men are no exception. Soldiers wear scars as a badge of both battle and survival, whether from war or last year's outbreak. Even the king himself isn't immune. Henry VIII reportedly carried his own collection of pockmarks, and no amount of royal makeup could erase them all. So, the next time you complain about a single blemish or search for a texture-smoothing filter, remember the Tudors. They wore their scars without shame, sometimes covered, sometimes flaunted, always proof that history leaves its mark. And in the world of Tudor beauty, resilience was the only accessory that truly never went out of style. If your eyes are red or puffy, rinse with rosewater or stale beer. Either way, the result is unpredictable. Eye infections are so common you start to wonder if blurry vision is just part of getting older. Welcome to Tudor ophthalmology, where vision care is a heady mix of hope, superstition, and whatever you can fish out of your pantry. In a world where screen time means peering at the embroidery you'll be unpicking later, it's no wonder everyone's eyes are tired, gritty, and suspiciously pink at least half the time. The air in your house is thick with wood smoke and candle fumes. And that's before you consider the constant dust from straw mattresses and animal visitors. Red eyes? In Tudor England, that's just how you know someone's alive. Let's talk treatments. The best case scenario is that you're noble enough to have a stash of rose water, a luxury for the eyes, and, depending on who made it, a low-key gamble with whatever else the apothecary swept into the jar. A gentle rinse with rose water is said to soothe and brighten, though mostly it leaves you smelling like a wilting bouquet and questioning your skincare decisions. If rose water is out of reach, there's always the village alternative, a splash of stale ale or leftover beer. The logic? If it's good for the stomach, it must be good for the eyes. The reality? Well, at least it stings enough to make you forget the original problem. Other home remedies are less poetic and more, well, agricultural. Some swear by milk, some by cold well water, others by the juice of mysterious herbs that no modern doctor would go near. The family beauty manual might suggest a poultice of bread soaked in chamomile tea, provided you can spare the bread and the tea isn't being reserved for your next fever. And if all else fails, the classic approach: simply rub your eyes with the corner of your sleeve and hope for the best. In Tudor times, what doesn't kill you makes you blink a lot. Of course, the real culprit behind so many eye problems is hygiene, or the spectacular lack of it. You're forever poking at your eyes after handling firewood, scrubbing at them with soot-covered hands, or adjusting a powdered wig that hasn't been cleaned since the last monarch died. The result? Eyes that itch, weep, and sometimes swell up until you look like you've just lost a fistfight with a hedgehog. Infection is basically a rite of passage. Everyone develops their own squint, and you learn to recognize friends by voice, not face, on a bad allergy day. Let's not forget vision loss. Eyeglasses exist, but they're rare and about as practical as wearing a soup bowl on your face. If you're lucky enough to own a pair, they're fragile, heavy, and more status symbol than solution. Most Tudors just accept blurry vision as the natural course of aging. You can't see the lice in your hair? Congratulations, you're finally at peace. On the rare occasion that someone does develop a serious eye infection, the treatments range from hopeful to horrifying. The apothecary might recommend washing with vinegar, prepare to scream, applying leeches behind the ears, or, if you're desperate, reciting prayers while staring directly at the sun. Medical knowledge is a delightful blend of astrology, herbal folklore, and stubborn optimism. You do what you're told, and if it doesn't work, well, at least you tried. Children are especially prone to pink eye, styes, and mysterious eye fevers. You tell them not to rub their eyes, knowing full well they'll immediately do just that, usually after wrestling with the family pig. Your only real hope is that they'll outgrow it, or that everyone else's eyesight will get bad enough not to notice. So the next time your eyes feel tired, give a little thanks for modern medicine, sterile saline, and the fact that nobody's reaching for the beer bottle to fix your vision. In Tudor England, see no evil isn't just a saying, it's an accidental lifestyle. Squinting is universal, eye makeup is for the brave, and if all else fails, just pretend you meant to wink. Sun-kissed glow? Not in style. A tan means you work outdoors. Nobles do everything possible to avoid the sun, including hiding indoors for months, or wearing hats so wide you could use them as parasols. SPF? Not even a concept. In Tudor England, pale skin is more than a beauty standard. It's a full-blown status symbol. It says, "I have never lifted a finger to do honest work in my life. And, more importantly, I can afford to look like I haven't seen the sun since last Michaelmas." If you're looking for bronzed shoulders and golden highlights, you'll have to wait for the invention of the beach holiday, or, the 20th century. Let's start with the basic equation: tan equals toil. Farmers, labourers, and the lower classes spend their days out in the fields, planting, harvesting, and developing a deep, earthy hue that no amount of scrubbing will ever erase. For them, sunburn is a badge of hard work, unappreciated by the upper crust, but entirely unavoidable. Nobles, meanwhile, do everything in their power to maintain a shade somewhere between fresh cheese and bleached parchment. The strategies for staying pale are both creative and, frankly, exhausting. Wealthy women spend whole seasons inside, entertaining themselves with embroidery, gossip, and possibly the slow fermentation of their own boredom. If they must venture outdoors, it's under the shelter of enormous hats, brimmed, beribboned, and broad enough to blot out the sky. Parasols, veils, and elaborate hoods complete the look. Your goal is to resemble a portable tent at all times. There's also a robust trade in powders and lotions meant to lighten skin even further. We're talking a full face of Venetian ceruse, yes, that lead concoction again, topped with a layer of flour or chalk. If a tiny patch of freckle appears, panic ensues. You might dab it with lemon juice, vinegar, or even rub it with sour milk, all in the hope of returning to your ghostly baseline. There are no sunless tanners, just endless hours plotting how to avoid daylight. Sunscreen, of course, is entirely unknown. The best you can do is smother yourself in whatever headwear you can find and pray for overcast skies. On the rare occasion a noble does get a little sun, you can be sure they'll be mocked at court, accused of taking up gardening, or, even worse, of mixing with the commoners. The horror. Even the architecture helps with the anti-tan agenda. Castles and manor houses are built with thick stone walls, narrow windows, and dark drapes, more to keep out the cold and the neighbours than the sun, but it does the trick. The average Tudor household is dim enough to keep your complexion in vampire mode all year round. If, despite your best efforts, you find yourself with a little redness on your nose or forehead, there are emergency measures. Powder, veils, and a strategic application of sick day excuses allow you to hide from society until the shame fades. Your mother might recommend a cold compress, or even a poultice made from mashed cucumber. But most of the time you just have to wait it out, hoping your tan doesn't become the talk of the next feast. The pressure isn't just on women. Men too are expected to be pale if they're of noble blood. Knights might claim a little colour from jousting or battle, but actual sunburn? That's for peasants and poets, not princes. Of course, there's irony here. The very thing modern society worships, a warm, healthy glow, is Tudor England's greatest source of embarrassment. You hide from the sun, you avoid hard labour, and you perfect the art of indoor living, all in pursuit of that enviable, slightly sickly pallor. So next time you see a Tudor portrait, marvel at the pale faces. Behind everyone is a story of relentless shade-seeking, creative headwear, and a lifelong avoidance of anything that looks remotely like sunshine. In Tudor England, catching some rays is a warning, not a weekend plan. Did you try a new skin cream and wake up with blisters? Did your friend's homemade wrinkle paste leave you looking like a roasted ham? Every Tudor has a story, and none end well. Welcome to the wild, unregulated world of Tudor beauty experiments, where every home is a makeshift laboratory and every beauty tip is just a dare waiting to go wrong. If you thought modern TikTok skincare hacks were risky, imagine trusting your face to advice handed down by someone whose last miracle cure involved goose droppings and a prayer. In this world, disaster is not only likely, it's practically a rite of passage. Let's start with the basics. Curiosity. Someone at court has flawless skin, by Tudor standards anyway, and when pressed, they whisper about a secret ointment made from pig's lard, rose petals, and a dash of something from the apothecary. The apothecary, for the record, is a shadowy figure who dispenses powders and potions with a knowing look and a vague warning. He's the Tudor equivalent of your friend's cousin who sells essential oils from her basement, charming, mysterious, and slightly terrifying. You're intrigued, of course. Who wouldn't want a face as smooth as the Queen's, or at least less like a weathered turnip? So you barter for the ingredients, mash everything together in a bowl, and slather it on before bed. The sensation is alarming. It burns, it tingles, and there's a smell that can only be described as barnyard at sunrise. You convince yourself this is just the potion working, After all, the best remedies always hurt. The next morning, you awake to find your face tight, shiny, and an alarming shade of red. Not the healthy Tudor flush, but the hue of overcooked ham. Your mother takes one look and prescribes a cold compress. Your grandmother recommends rubbing it with cabbage leaves and reciting a psalm. Your neighbor brings over a mysterious salve that smells worse than your pillowcase. You try them all, but deep down, you know, you've become another cautionary tale. Hair treatments are no safer. Word spreads that rosemary and lye will make your hair grow as thick as a boar's bristles. You try it, and by noon your scalp is tingling. By evening, it's on fire. If you're lucky, you're left with a patch of scalp resembling scorched earth. If you're unlucky, you're down a few layers of skin and up a few enemies who now know your secrets. Even the men aren't spared. In pursuit of a glorious beard, some turn to apothecary pastes containing anything from crushed beans to animal fat and quicklime. The results? Patches of singed stubble, suspiciously hairless spots, and, if you're really unlucky, a permanent frown from your barber. Then there are the horror stories that pass from house to house, like the girl who tried to bleach her freckles with vinegar and ashes, only to end up with a constellation of burns and a lifelong nickname. Or the lad who followed a recipe for lip-plumping balm, goose fat, mustard, and, for reasons unknown, a splash of brandy, and couldn't speak clearly for a week. There's a reason most Tudors are skeptical of new trends. The scars, both literal and figurative, linger for years. What's remarkable is the optimism that never seems to die. Every blunder is met with a shrug and a new experiment. Maybe next time, it'll work. Maybe next time, you'll wake up beautiful. Or maybe next time you'll learn to be happy with the face you have, boils, spots and all. So, the next time your skincare routine doesn't deliver instant miracles, spare a thought for the Tudors, bravely layering on pig fat and powdered snails in pursuit of fleeting radiance. Their mistakes paved the way for yours, and their blunders remind us that sometimes history's greatest beauty lesson is simply this: proceed with caution, keep your sense of humour, and always have a cabbage leaf handy. The town apothecary is a mix between pharmacist and hopeful wizard. He'll sell you a cure for wrinkles, but it's mostly just beeswax, powdered horn, and some dirt from the local graveyard. Refunds not available. If you're searching for the original beauty influencer, look no further than the Tudor apothecary. Tucked away in a crooked shop on the edge of the market square, he's the go-to guru for every blemish, boil, and beauty emergency. Step inside, and you'll find a world of mysterious jars, pungent herbs, and an overwhelming scent that's equal parts dried lavender and existential dread. The apothecary's shelves are lined with vials labelled in spidery handwriting: potion for plump cheeks, elixir of eternal shine, powder for unseen veins. You ask for a skin brightener, and he presents a wax-sealed jar filled with a paste the colour of sadness. The ingredients? A secret, of course, but after a few questions and a wink, you might learn that it's beeswax, some ground-up antlers, a pinch of garden sage, and, if you're feeling brave, a sprinkling of dust swept from under a particularly lucky tombstone. He mixes everything with the confidence of a man who's never used his own products. His advice is always delivered with absolute certainty, and, if questioned, he'll blame the moon phase or a misalignment of the stars. Apply at sunrise while fasting. Dance 3 times in a circle. If it tingles, it's working. If it burns, congratulations, you're purging evil spirits. You nod, thank him, and hand over half your weekly wages for a promise and a prayer. Wrinkle creams are his specialty. He'll whip up a blend of goose fat, rose petals, and vinegar, with just a hint of lead for opacity. If you're lucky, it only smells faintly of pickled poultry. If you're not, it's an olfactory experience that will haunt you long after the wrinkles have deepened. You slather it on, hoping for rejuvenation but bracing for the possibility of a rash. Spot removers are another favourite. For unsightly blemishes, Simply dab with this paste of crushed pearl, soot, and old bread. The results are mixed, but the confidence is contagious. If you complain about side effects, he'll offer a new balancing tonic made from burnt thyme, eggshell, and, for extra potency, a drop of ox bile. Drink it down and prepare for the sort of stomach excitement that takes your mind off your skin entirely. Hair tonics are a true adventure. For thinning hair, he recommends a rinse made from boiled nettles, apple cider, and the tears of an honest man, which, given the time period, are in very short supply. For dry scalps, a salve of sheep's tallow and ground sage. For lice, a powder that smells suspiciously like gunpowder and burns just as enthusiastically. Still, you keep coming back, because if anyone has a chance of outsmarting medieval biology, it's the apothecary. He also sells perfumes, usually a blend of herbs, dried flowers, and musk from questionable sources. The vials are stoppered with wax and sealed with a spell for luck. Dab behind the ears, under the chin, and on the wrists. If the goats avoid you, it's working. If your neighbours avoid you, even better. Perhaps his most valuable skill is his bedside manner. No matter how disastrous the results, he'll reassure you. You're simply purging impurities, or the treatment draws out inner beauty. In the world of Tudor beauty, hope springs eternal, even if the ointments expire after a week. Still, some of his remedies do work, at least occasionally, and almost always by accident. Honey soothes wounds, vinegar deters lice, and rosewater actually makes you smell less like a smoked ham. But mostly, you're paying for the thrill of possibility and a story to tell at the next market day. So you leave, purse lighter and heart heavier, clutching your jar of miracle cream. In Tudor England, beauty is a gamble, and the apothecary is the house. And the house, of course, always wins, especially when he's mixing the cards with graveyard dust and a wink. At court, the competition is fierce. If you don't look radiant, you're invisible, or worse, whispered about by people who are literally rotting from their own eyeliner. Beauty is pain, and in Tudor England, it's also a full-time job. The palace is a grand, echoing stage, and every corridor is a catwalk lined with rivals. You are surrounded by women and a few men, armed with lead paint, velvet patches, and more ambition than good sense. Here, it's not enough to simply exist. You have to dazzle, no matter how many rashes, boils, or questionable ointments it takes. Looking healthy isn't the goal, looking flawless is. If you radiate a gentle glow, it's not because you're healthy, it's because you're sweating under 3 layers of Venetian ceruse. Each day begins with anxiety and a mirror. Is your lead paint smooth and evenly applied? Are your painted veins bright enough to suggest that you're full of noble blood, not just disappointment? Did the homemade rouge actually stay put, or did it slowly migrate down to your chin over breakfast? You scrutinize every pore, every blemish, every wrinkle, knowing that somewhere in the room someone else is doing the same to you. You're never alone either. Ladies in waiting swarm the Queen's chambers like bees, each eager to be noticed, to be chosen for a coveted dance or a passing compliment. There's a strict hierarchy, and it's measured not just by title, but by skin tone, eyebrow arch, and the subtle shimmer of pearl dust on your collarbone. Fall short, and the only thing you'll attract is rumours. Fashion is relentless. Every week brings a new must-have look, whether it's an even higher forehead, a new way to pluck your brows into oblivion, or a fresh interpretation of the sickly pallor. Beauty patches change shape and placement, and the wrong choice is social suicide. 1 minute, stars are in. The next, it's crescent moons or tiny velvet hearts. If you don't keep up, you'll hear about it, not to your face, but in the giggles behind a fan at the next feast. Let's not forget the men. Gentlemen at court face their own pressure to glow, and sometimes glower. Beards must be immaculately shaped, moustaches waxed, and cheeks rosy enough to suggest both vigour and status. Hair must be powdered and perfumed, cloaks brushed, boots polished. Even the king is subject to scrutiny. Henry VIII famously changed fashions overnight. If he appeared in a new colour, you could expect a rush on that shade by morning, even if it made you look like a boiled carrot. Surviving court means constant vigilance. You reapply powder before every event, touch up rouge between courses, and pray that your wig stays firmly in place as you bow, curtsy, and try not to faint. You master the art of the strategic cough, the discreet scratch, the elegant way to hide a rash with a well-placed sleeve or a dramatic sigh. Everyone is pretending, but nobody admits it. In the glittering gloom of the palace, denial is the most popular accessory. The worst fate is to be ignored. If you blend in, you'll never rise. If you stand out for the wrong reason, a lopsided patch, a new boil, an unfortunate slip of your wig, you become the day's entertainment. The gossip will outlast the bruise, and you'll find yourself fighting twice as hard to reclaim your reputation, one disastrous face mask at a time. Still, the courtly beauty arms race goes on. Tomorrow brings another chance to glow, through more paint, more powder, and more heroic suffering. You'll do what it takes. Because somewhere under all those layers is a spark of hope. That if you can just get it right, you'll catch the king's eye, the queen's favour, or at least a few hours' peace before the next beauty scandal breaks. So you stand a little taller, powder a little heavier, and smile, carefully, so your paint doesn't crack. Because in Tudor England, beauty might be pain, but invisibility is even worse. Finally, it's bedtime. You scrape off the layers of lead, dust off the lice, and attempt to wash your face with tepid water. Did anything improve? Of course not. But you survived another day without being poisoned by your moisturizer. Sleep well, beautiful. The end of a Tudor day is less nightly skincare routine and more damage control with a dash of wishful thinking. As the last candle sputters and the house grows quiet, you begin the great unwinding. You remove your head covering and stare into your warped reflection, less of a mirror, more of a reality check. Every inch of your face tells the story of your daily survival. The new patch of redness on your chin, a little more powder caked into your hairline, and the faint outline of your beauty patch now stuck firmly to your pillow. First comes the ceremonial scraping. Forget gentle micellar water or foaming cleansers. You reach for a soft, well-used linen and begin the task of peeling off the day's investments. Thick layers of lead-based makeup, crushed bug rouge, flour powder, and whatever else your face has acquired since sunrise. Each pass of the cloth feels like both an exfoliation and an exorcism, revealing fresh evidence of new spots, old scars, and a touch of existential dread. Water, if you're lucky, is lukewarm. Most nights, it's cold enough to make you question your life choices. You splash your face, watching as the cloudy runoff pools at your feet, and you hope the tiny trickle of soap you have left does more good than harm. If you're truly desperate, you might use a handful of oats or the very last dregs of ale. The ale is usually more effective as a drink, but these are desperate times. Next, you pick through your hair. With any luck, the lice are too exhausted to put up much of a fight. A fine-toothed comb, passed carefully through the tangles, doubles as a louse hunt, and a quick review of your day's hygiene failures. You remove what you can, sigh at what you can't, and then pin your hair back up to keep it from picking up any more critters while you sleep. Now it's time to address whatever new indignity your skin has suffered. A dab of animal fat is supposed to lock in moisture, and possibly attract every family dog within a mile. But you make do with what's left. Maybe a touch of honey if you're feeling fancy, or some sour milk for your latest rash, passed down from your grandmother, along with the cautionary tale about the time she accidentally glued her eyelids shut. You pull on your nightcap, climb into bed beside your snoring relatives, and do a quick scan of your limbs for new bites, boils, or suspicious marks. If you're lucky, tonight the bedding is mostly straw, less bugs, and no sudden cold patches. You try to position your face away from the dog, whose devotion to your bacon-fat night cream is beginning to feel personal. For a moment, you pause to consider, Did any of this actually help? Are you closer to radiant beauty or simply further from disaster? The answer, as always, is complicated. You're not flawless, but you're here. You made it through another day of powders, plagues, and impossible standards. And if you wake up tomorrow with the same number of teeth and only one new boil, you'll call it a win. As you close your eyes, you feel a faint, greasy residue on your cheek and the soothing weight of exhaustion. You survived the endless courtly comparisons, the miracle remedies, and the ever-present threat of your moisturizer being more lethal than the pox. You've earned your rest. So sleep well, beautiful. In Tudor England, perfection is a myth, but resilience is very real. And if you dream of clear skin and fresh linens, just know you're centuries ahead of your time. Fashionable moles, or beauty patches, are suddenly everywhere in the Tudor court. Made of velvet, silk, or even mouse skin, these little stickers are applied to hide smallpox scars, boils, or the side effects of last night's homemade wrinkle paste. There's no rhyme or reason, just a hope that people focus on the felt star glued to your cheek instead of the actual medieval disaster happening underneath. Let's take a stroll through the royal court and behold the great patch parade. Everywhere you look, faces are dotted with mysterious little shapes. Stars, moons, hearts, and the occasional ambiguous blob, each more inventive than the last. In this world of lead paint complexions and boil-based surprises, a strategically placed beauty patch is the difference between fashionable intrigue and unfortunate medical situation. It's Tudor camouflage for the chronically blemished. The appeal is obvious. Why spend half your wages on apothecary creams that might turn you purple, when you can simply slap a bit of black velvet on top and call it a day? Some patches are barely bigger than a freckle, carefully placed at the corner of a mouth to suggest mystery, or cover a scab. Others are bold, geometric, and as subtle as a cannon blast. Placement becomes an art form, and, for some, a coded language. Rumour has it that every patch tells a story. A star near the eye? You're witty and ready for court gossip. A moon on the chin? A touch of melancholy. Or maybe you just tripped on the stairs and landed face first into a chamber pot. A patch above the lip says flirtatious, while one on the cheek declares open for intrigue. By the end of a busy feast, the meanings have multiplied, and everyone's trying to decode who's making a play for whom, or just hiding the world's angriest pimple. If you're lucky, and well-funded, your patches are made of softest velvet, or the finest imported silk. For the less fortunate, a snip from a tattered glove will do, and yes, mouse skin is absolutely in the running. One enterprising lady even tries to pass off a bit of dried fruit as a new style, until the court dog eats it off her chin during a dance. The lesson? Always glue with care, and always keep your distance from hungry animals. Application is an adventure in itself. There's no spirit gum or medical adhesive, just a dab of honey, a bit of goose grease, or the stickiest ointment you can steal from your grandmother's vanity. The downside? Your patch might migrate mid-conversation, or worse, detach and end up on the shoulder of the Lord Chancellor, sparking a round of who wore it best that nobody wins. It's a risk every courtier takes. But the true genius of beauty patches is their role as a social smokescreen. Everyone knows what's lurking underneath. The remnants of last week's outbreak, a botched home remedy, or the relentless march of time across your jawline. But nobody mentions it. Instead, they compliment your celestial arrangement or ask about the symbolism of your miniature velvet heart. The patches become both mask and message, hiding your flaws while inviting just enough attention to keep you in the game. Soon, patch placement becomes a competitive sport. There are patch trendsetters, those who debut the latest shape or most daring location, and patch disasters, like the poor soul who sneezed mid-application and ended up with a velvet crescent stuck to their nose for the entire royal supper. There's always gossip about who's using the most patches and who's gone barefaced, which in the Tudor court is either scandalous bravery or the result of running out of glue. Of course, some choose to forego patches entirely, embracing their natural pockmarks and spots, These outliers are sometimes admired for their boldness, or whispered about as having given up. But for most, beauty spot roulette is an everyday survival tactic, one more way to distract from the medieval chaos happening just beneath the surface. So next time you apply a sticker or a pimple patch before a big meeting, remember your Tudor ancestors, masters of misdirection, artists of adhesive, and survivors of the world's most competitive beauty patch lottery. In the end, they knew the truth. Sometimes, the best way to look good is just to give everyone something better to look at. Let's not forget the men. In Tudor England, a beard is your pride, your status symbol, and sometimes your best defense against the cold. Maintaining it, however, is a nightmare. You'll be waxing, curling, and powdering that chin forest with anything from bare fat to soot, while dodging lice, crumbs, and the occasional panicked mouse. Is it worth it? Ask the guy whose beard just caught on fire at dinner. In a world where power and masculinity are measured in inches of facial hair, beards become the gold standard. A lush beard means you're virile, wise, and probably plotting something. The king himself sets the tone. Henry VIII's facial hair is the stuff of legend, shifting in style from stubbly menace to full warlord in winter. As a Tudor gentleman, you must keep up or risk ridicule and, worse, irrelevance. But growing a beard is just the beginning. Now you have to maintain it. A full-time commitment that rivals the beauty routines of any courtly lady. Every morning, you wake up to find your beard a little wilder, a little more tangled, and possibly home to more than just ambition. The first tool of the day is the comb, a heavy wooden affair dragged through the thicket with grim determination. Along the way, you'll find the remnants of last night's stew, a few stray oats, and at least one panicked insect. You do your best to ignore the small dramas unfolding in the undergrowth. Styling is next. No beard is truly regal unless it's shaped, curled, and, if you're feeling daring, braided. Tudor wax is made from animal fats, beeswax, or, in truly desperate times, whatever's left at the bottom of the candle. It smells strongly, an olfactory cocktail of barnyard and honeycomb, and makes your beard both shiny and suspiciously stiff. For extra flair, a dusting of flour or powdered starch gives your whiskers that all-important frosted look, perfect for impressing guests or alarming children. But the hazards are ever present. Lice are not picky about their real estate. They'll happily set up a thriving metropolis somewhere between your left cheek and your chin strap. This leads to nightly beard inspections, often in front of the fire, where your wife or best friend will pick through your facial foliage with the same care usually reserved for sheep shearing or treasure hunting. The sense of intimacy is unique. Nothing says brotherhood like helping a friend evict unwelcome tenants from his whiskers. And then there are the accidents. The beard is a magnet for disaster. Soup, sauce, gravy, and even the occasional beetle. Nothing ruins your courtly mystique faster than discovering half your meal still clinging to your chin. Worst of all are the fires. Open flames abound at court dinners, and one careless lean over a roasting spit can leave you short a few inches, or, for the truly unfortunate, give you a new nickname that will follow you for life. Singed Simon never quite lived it down. Of course, not every man can grow a magnificent beard. For those with patchy growth or slow follicles, the options are creative. Some resort to beard enhancers, rubs and potions made from stinging nettle, burnt rosemary, or even raw onion. Others go for the ultimate gamble, a faux beard stitched from animal hair and glued on with pine resin. The risk? A sudden sneeze or a strong breeze might leave you barefaced and mortified in front of the entire court. Despite the struggle, a beard remains a source of pride. It's a symbol of adulthood, a badge of authority, and sometimes the only warmth you'll get during a Tudor winter. You stroke it thoughtfully in meetings, twirl it absent-mindedly while plotting, and occasionally hide a treat or two for emergencies. So next time you trim your stubble with modern tools and curse the stray hair in your sink, remember the Tudor gentleman, braving lice, lard, and the ever-present threat of spontaneous combustion, all in pursuit of facial glory. And if you catch a whiff of bacon next time you pass a candle, spare a thought for the men whose beards paved the way, one disaster at a time. You want your eyes to pop, so you reach for your eyeliner. A homemade blend of lamp black, goose fat, and sometimes a splash of mercury for brightness. Application is as risky as Russian roulette, but beauty waits for no one. If your eyes water, sting, and swell up, just smile and pretend it's part of the look. Fashion hurts, and so does conjunctivitis. Let's set the scene. It's an important day at court, and you want to look especially alluring. You sit at your wobbly vanity, candle flickering, and start preparing your eyes for battle. Forget modern pencils, liquid liners, or anything remotely resembling safe for use near the human face. The Tudor toolkit is, at best, improvised. Your eyeliner comes from soot, collected off the back of a lamp, pure, grainy lamp black, scooped carefully and mixed with a dab of animal fat so it won't flake off before you reach the dining hall. Of course, the fat comes with its own ambience. Depending on what you have on hand, you might be working with goose, pork, or beef tallow. The texture is thick, sticky, and a little bit gritty, like trying to paint with slightly melted candle wax. If you're feeling adventurous or desperate to impress, you add a dash of mercury. It's the Tudor version of highlighter, hazardous, metallic, and practically guaranteed to make your eyes shine in the candlelight, and maybe for several days afterward as you battle the side effects. Application is a high-stakes affair. With no mirrors bright enough for detail, you do your best in the dim light, using a sharpened stick, a sliver of bone, or just your pinky finger. The goal is a smooth, defined line along the lid, a bold look that says courtly sophistication if you nail it, or escaped chimney sweep if you don't. There's a moment of tension every time you dip the applicator. Will this be the stroke that brings your vision to life, or the one that introduces a permanent twitch? The sensation? A bit like rubbing oily charcoal into your eyes, which is exactly what it is. Your lids tingle, your eyes water, and you silently pray you didn't pick up any stray ash from the last fire. If you're lucky, you achieve a smoky, sultry look that's all the rage at court. If not, you blink repeatedly, eyes watering down your cheeks, as you try to convince yourself the stinging means the magic is working. Side effects are not so much a possibility as an inevitability. Swollen lids, itchy corners, and mysterious redness are all part of the Tudor beauty experience. The worst cases result in a full-blown eye infection, what we now call conjunctivitis, but the Tudors simply call Tuesday. When this happens, you slap on extra lead-based powder, avoid direct eye contact, and tell people you're just being fashionably mysterious. Despite the risks, eye makeup is wildly popular. It adds a sense of drama to your look and helps draw attention away from any boils or blotches the lead paint didn't cover. For some, the eyeliner doubles as eyebrow filler, giving your brows the ghost of a shape after hours of overzealous plucking. Men aren't above a little eye enhancement either, especially if they're trying to stand out at court or woo a particularly discerning widow. Gossip at court is ruthless. If your eyeliner runs during dinner, leaving streaks down your face, the whispers will follow you for weeks. If your eyes are puffy and red, everyone assumes you either spent the morning weeping over unrequited love or experimenting with the apothecary's latest miracle. Still, there's a certain camaraderie among the beauty-minded. You share tips, tricks, and occasionally the name of a good herbalist who knows how to treat accidental mercury poisoning. At the end of the night, you attempt to remove the mess with a damp rag and the same soap you use for everything else. The residue lingers, and so does the faint tingle in your eyes, a reminder of your commitment to style over sanity. So next time you line your eyes with something labelled safe for sensitive skin, spare a thought for the Tudors. Bold, brave, and half-blind, but never afraid to risk it all for a dramatic gaze. In this world, if your look doesn't hurt a little, you're just not trying hard enough. So tonight, as you drift off in your cozy bed, soft sheets, gentle lighting, and absolutely zero chance of rolling over onto a slice of pig fat, take a quiet moment to thank the universe for your modern skincare routine. No lead, no lard, no suspicious herbal teas brewed in a cauldron that also moonlights as a chamber pot. Because if you'd lived in Tudor England, beauty was a battlefield. You survived boiling ointments, eyebrow extinctions, and night creams that doubled as bacon grease. You braved the smoky halls of the palace, the stench of natural perfumes, and the gentle judgment of relatives who swore sour milk could erase your freckles. And you did it all while dodging disease, gossip, and the daily lottery of whether your latest beauty potion would cure your rash or just move it somewhere else. It wasn't easy, but people found a way. They adapted, they endured, and sometimes they even thrived, patches, boils, and all. Their routines may seem ridiculous now, but they were acts of hope, stubbornness, and a kind of medieval optimism that refused to quit, even when the beauty advice came from someone who'd never seen a mirror. So as you lay back, snug and clean, with your pores blissfully lead-free, maybe whisper a small thank you to the past. Thank you to the men and women who suffered for beauty, so we could one day scroll through skincare memes from the comfort of our heated, bugless bedrooms. Because history, for all its horrors and hilarity, is proof that people have always wanted to look their best, even if best involved a little animal fat and a lot of denial. Sleep well, be kind to your skin, and remember, you're already more beautiful than any Tudor ever dreamed. Good night.